Welcome to the Dynasty Pulse on Fantasy Football Plus Network and the Undroppables. I am bigz. These are your boys. I think I'm going to do something a little bit different this week. We're just going to do like a fantasy, no analysis. We're just going to do a fantasy draft. We're going to draft childhood nostalgia. I'll go first with the 101. I draft scratch and sniff stickers.
Scratch and sniff Snickers. I love that.
I'm kidding. This is the Dynasty Pulse. We're here to talk Dynasty Fantasy Football. I've got Schultzy here. I got Grindberg here. I got Chev, the legendary ball knower here. And I got Coach Retzlaff here. Let's get into it. Mike, is there any news?
We're kind of just at the end of the season here. We had a pretty awesome show last week. We had our best calls of 2024, had some pretty good bangers in that one. Chev, had to shout out your Kyron Williams, Chase Brown take there, after analyzing it, broke it down. I mean, they were pretty even there. So good call on you to have that premonition early on, and way to go, man. That was really awesome. And now this week, not so great. We're going to go over some calls that we have to, humble ourselves with, because we had a lot of great calls in 2024, but we also had some bad ones that we have to take ownership over. And we're going to start that off today, but also,
you do.
Yeah. Okay. I think we all do. But then
you're never wrong. You're just early or it hasn't happened yet. Right.
Right. Either early or late.
Exactly. And then we'll get into our stock up, stock down, because we didn't get time for that last week, but we'll make some time this week. There's not much meaningful fantasy football other than some DFS stuff right now. So Dynasty is key. So let's get her ripping. Who's first on the slate, Schultzy?
Well, I think it's me.
There you go.
The answer's in the question, right?
That's a good point. You know what? There's some humble pie to this one, but it involves my beloved Jaguars, and I'm absolutely a pro at taking humble pie about the Jaguars. So my biggest miss was literally just the Jaguars, man. I was super high on Trevor Lawrence, Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, off the trio. And then the funniest part of my take was I was down on Brian Thomas Jr. So I whiffed so damn hard on the Jaguars. Now you go 2 seasons back, Trevor goes on an absolute tear down the stretch to fight the team into the playoffs, starts 8-3 the following season before getting just absolutely decimated by injuries. Defense was absolutely terrible down the stretch. Like, it was just an absolute mess of a second half of the season. Like, I don't think anyone was surviving. Trevor shouldn't even have been playing, to be honest. He was really messed up that year. So you turn it around, you get healthy Trevor back, you get Kirk and Ingram, you're adding some legit speed on the outside to, only help these dudes operate in the middle and underneath. The writing was all there. Turns out Doug Peterson is a freaking joke. He has done absolutely nothing to evolve this offense since 2022. Before the emergence of Brian Thomas, if Christian Kirk got out schematically, he was screwed. Christian Kirk was a schematic linchpin in his offense. That is not an offensive wizard. He's done nothing to adapt in the 3 seasons he was in Jacksonville. The pre-snap motion rates were the bottom third of the league. Just no creativity. He handed the play calling duties to Press Taylor and then just let him sink the ship, essentially, and then never took the reins back. Like, you're an offensive wizard who got to where you were as a play caller. Like, take it back. Take some ownership of this. It was an absolute train wreck from a coaching standpoint. Trevor goes down with injuries again. I couldn't have been any more wrong on this. And the funniest part, like I said, is the whole Brian Thomas thing. I was like big time out on him as a rookie, and look at that.
Yeah, you had us all bought in on the Jags too, which sank
way to go, me.
Fantasy formats.
Yeah, it's funny. The top rope up here, we all had some people trying to convince each other on our own teams here, the Jags, the Raiders, and the Chiefs. So did we ever whiff on all our teams this year? And you know what? It happens, right? I mean, we're going to maybe take some of this stuff as homerism and really concentrate next year and maybe overcoming that. But Schultzy.
Trevor in a full off season with Brian Thomas. Oh, we're going to the moon.
Oh my God. And now they're going to have Spags as the head coach. Everything's going to go, good for them defensively, and they're not going to be out of games, and Travis Etienne's going to be back in the fold. It's all going to happen.
You name it. Oh, that's right.
It's all coming back, and you know what? We'll see what happens here. I'm going to tread carefully again with the Jags, knowing that they bit us pretty hard this year as one of our biggest whiffs as a unit, right? As the original Dynasty Pulse unit here, I think we all whiffed on the Jags. So,
hey, don't worse than last year. Wheels up.
Yeah.
Hey, can I say something without it sounding too crazy?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Fire away.
I think a lot of the Jaguars present themselves as an excellent buy low, especially in particular. We can be wrong towards the top, right? But in calling bottom, we can be correct again, or for the first time, correct the incorrect take, right? So you guys were ringing the bell at the top. It didn't happen, right? But as there's a dip down, I still think there's an opportunity for us to recorrect on these Jaguars. What do you guys say? Evan Ingram, a healthy Christian Kirk, and possibly a new opportunity with somebody like Ben Johnson with Trevor Lawrence. We already know it's going to help Trevor Lawrence a whole lot if he's got Brian Thomas Jr. So what do you guys say about some Jaguars?
I'd buy Trevor. I would not be buying Evan or Kirk right now. Okay. Kirk is he's just a dude, and there's a dude who's way more talented next to him now. Evan Ingram might potentially not be on the team next year, and I'm not sticking my balls out to trade for that guy if he's not going to be there.
I would a bit more Trevor Lawrence.
Oh, I would definitely buy Trevor. Yes.
Okay. I would buy Tank Bigsby.
I can get on that.
All right, let's hear about it, though. I want to hear more about that. That's an intriguing, situation there. I want to hear what your take is on Travis Etienne then afterwards.
Well, I think that him, them exercising his 5th-year option, them being in what a lot of people would consider a rebuild now, and just not wanting to pay a running back long-term money, you could find yourself trading him to a running back needy team that could be a piece away. I don't know what the Vikings are going to do with Aaron Jones. I don't know the Dallas Cowboys are probably going to draft somebody, but if they miss out on Ashton Jeanty, or just decide to completely ignore the running back position again, they could probably send like a 3rd or a 4th round pick, and then, some other pick and get Travis Etienne.
Are you listening, GM Tom Brady?
Yeah. So, the Raiders, even though, again, bad team, don't want to pay a running back, that's the only reason that I didn't include them in that. But the Giants could be in play there. If we're opening it up to bad teams, but I just like teams that might be a piece or two away. The Cowboys still finished 8-9 or whatever it was, 7-10, and they missed their quarterback for the last 8 games of the season or 7 games. So that comes to mind. I think that bar none, if the backfield is just Tank Bigsby's, then you have to take him very seriously. He'll experience a big time rise like Zamir White did this past offseason. But I think Tank Bigsby's actually good, so you might be right in trying to acquire him now.
All right, I like it. Okay. Let's get on to the next one now, Coach. Let's hear about your Diontae Johnson take and why you were so high on him coming into the season, because I was too, honestly.
Yes.
Honestly, if you weren't, you were stupid. I stand by that. If you were not in on Diontae this year, you were stupid.
Hey, thank you for letting me know I'm not stupid. I'll take anything I get in that direction. Thank you. Look, Diontae Johnson, I had a prediction he would bump into the 2nd and the 3rd round for ADP into 2025. I had this fire stat I dropped on a bunch of different shows all off season, which I'm about to tell you, which is crazy. The Dwayne McFarland school of thought, right, is always the best way to predict future fantasy football performance is from past fantasy football performance, right? So this is what burned me. Ready? From 2020 to 2022, Diontae Johnson had 144, 169, and 146 targets, respectively, which ranked 3 consecutive years in targets, second, 6th, and 2nd. So sprinkle in touchdown equity going Johnson's way, and he was set up for a monster year. For me, Diontae Johnson was the worst of a broader call I had. He, along with JSN and BTJ, rising up. Those 2 out of 3 that I got right feel good. But this one, I wear it. You got to wear the bad ones. You got to wear the bad calls. Diontae Johnson did not get the call to the show. Diontae Johnson will have to buy a ticket like the rest of us if he wants to see an ADP like he had last year in round 7 and round 8. In finance, they have a phrase, you don't catch a falling knife. So you essentially, if you blindly buy low on a stock, you don't realize there's that dip in perpetuity. So if you reach out and you buy the stock when it drops to $5, that dip is still going through your hand, the knife is going through your hand. It's tanking tenfold from where you think you bought the dip. So where was the knife falling for Diontae Johnson? We sit here and think, where did it go wrong? Diontae gets a trade in the offseason from the Steelers with Mike Tomlin. Was that the point to be out? He was fed all day and would be fed all day with Bryce Young. That didn't work out. Bryce Young gets benched after 2 disastrous games. From that point, we had the dead cat bounce. Andy Dalton comes in weeks 3 through 6, wide receiver 6, 10, 57, and 12. So 3 top 12 weeks in a span of a month. So it falls apart for Diontae week 7 through 12. At best, he was wide receiver 82 and as low as wide receiver 108 with 3 0-point performances. Diontae goes to Baltimore, doesn't get used. He's now in Houston. Houston, we have a problem. In 2024, I was way out or off big time on Diontae Johnson. Bad call by me.
I mentioned on the show last week when I was highlighting my Ladd McConkey take that there was an article that I had written. It was basically an ADP battle with me and Dan Williamson over on Player Profiler. And Dan Williamson is a very, very respected analyst. He's well known in the industry. He took the Diontae Johnson side. There are a couple of quotes from this article talking about McConkey's bread and butter comes in the slot. We have to wonder just how often he'll even be on the field. The good news is he should be used to standing on the sideline, as that's where he spent most of his time at Georgia. And then, quote, Diontae Johnson, on the other hand, has been a target magnet in his career. If we throw out last year where he missed several games with an injury, he earned 144, 169, 147 targets in the previous 3 years. You won't find many other players available this deep in a draft with target earning history that good who aren't clearly in the decline phase of their careers. Johnson just turned 28 this summer. He's still in his prime. He's joining Dave Canales and Bryce Young. Johnson is exactly the receiver Canales needs to resuscitate Young's career. And then good reports out of training camp. So you absolutely were not wrong in your analysis. Everybody had Diontae Johnson. Everybody in the industry that wasn't a casual drafter was looking at Diontae Johnson's ADP and saying, there's no reason this guy should be being drafted at this ADP. He's way too low. The casuals, they weren't taking him because they didn't know. They don't do the analysis. But the people who do the analysis, that track record is absolutely bona fide. We just didn't see what happened coming. And you can't. We're not in the business of predicting what's going to happen. We're in the business of predicting what's most likely to happen. And for all of us who were high on Diontae, that was what was most likely to happen. For all of us who were low on Brian Thomas Jr., that was what was most likely to happen.
It's true.
There are outliers to everything. And that's kind of one of the reasons that we're doing this show. So that we can defend our good process bad results.
The thing I don't get about Diontae is I don't remember where he ranked in like 22, 23. I remember talking about this on one of our summer shows. Like he was really high ranked, like I want to say he's in top 10 at separation score and like getting himself open.
Yes.
And then on the flip side, he was playing with quarterbacks who couldn't hit a fucking barn. So it was like put those two together. You get the dude who gets himself wide open every play and just get him with a guy who doesn't completely suck ass. Fireworks, right?
Well, yeah, and one of the things I'm going to be looking at real heavy going into this next season is catchable ball rate by quarterbacks, which I did a lot of homework on catchable ball rate last year, which is where I found the Russell Wilson bump in Pittsburgh, although that didn't work out as well as I thought it would just because of his injury to start the year. But you have guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., Romo Dunze, who are like hovering around 50% catch rates. Those are bad balls. Those aren't bad receivers. Their numbers are bad, but expect regression if they have a quarterback improvement or some kind of change or whatever. And obviously those two guys aren't going to have some kind of change or quarterback improvement, but there are other examples around the league where you get metrics like that. And it definitely points to an opportunity for positive regression that most people aren't going to see coming.
I totally agree. No, I was with you guys. I looked at this as this offseason's, we can go back. You can point to Josh Allen getting Stephon Diggs, and then the following year, A.J. Brown getting, or Jalen Hurts getting A.J. Brown, and then pointing to an almost direct correlation between their arrivals and their meteoric rise into fantasy, damn near immortality. So I thought this was that version. Not only did that not come true, but Bryce Young was benched after 2 weeks. So that put us in and then you get the 1 week with Andy Dalton. You're like, yeah, great. That's fantastic. As coach refers to it as the dead cat bounce. And I caught that dead cat and I was like, I'm going to run with it. And it was like, no, this really sucks.
You could also call it Raiders week.
Yeah. Look, I'm not here to poo-poo on your team. I'm gonna let you do that.
That's a great segue actually there, Chev, because bigz is about to eat some crow on his take this year, and it was about one of his Raiders players. So let's hear about it, bigz.
Yeah, going into the 2024 season, coming out of 2023, Zamir White looked like he was poised to beat his ADP. He had finished up 2023 with 4 straight games that Josh Jacobs missed because of injury. And in those games, he averaged 4.57, 4.62 yards per carry, 21 carries per game. He was on pace, extrapolated for a 12 to 1,600 yard season with some positive touchdown regression in the right offense. They were coming off of a second half of the season where they were actually winning games, which was going to lead to defenses backing off, letting Aiden O'Connell cook. The defense was top 5 over the second half of the season, so that's going to keep the offense on the field. And a lot of stuff happened in the offseason for the Raiders that was very, very much not good. They lost a couple of their best run blockers, Greg Van Roten, who somehow played every single snap for the New York Giants, even though he wasn't great in pass protection. He was pretty good against the run in 2023 for the Raiders. Colton Miller started off the season with an injury. They were trying to work Jackson Powers Johnson, their new draft pick, in at the center position. Andre James is not a good player. So it wasn't until Jackson Powers Johnson actually got back from injury, week 4, week 5, something like that the Raiders offensive line started to approach competency in run blocking. But by that time, Zamir White had gotten himself hurt. Alexander Madison was showing more explosive plays, even though his down-to-down efficiency was still not as good as Zamir White's. His average yards before contact was lower than Zamir White's was. Zamir White dealt with some serious issues, wound up getting hurt, staying hurt, and then losing the last third of the season due to injury. The bottom line was that Zamir White was on the cusp of I did want to bring up Gardner Minshew and Luke Getsy. Luke Getsy was a terrible offensive coordinator and play caller, but we knew that going into the season. Then they elected to go with Gardner Minshew as their starting quarterback. No defense was scared of Gardner Minshew. They had 8 men in the box just about every play. Minshew wasn't going to beat anybody with a deep ball or anything like that. So all of the defenses were very close to the offensive line, and the running backs had zero space to work in. So all of that led to just a disaster of a year for Zamir White, who remains young. He's entering his third or fourth year in the NFL. He was being drafted in the 30s, and my main call with Zamir White is in your 0 RB builds, he's the perfect candidate to be taking in those double-digit rounds because of the potential for him to pop up and put together a full season where he repeats his efficiency from 2023. That absolutely did not happen. And I take the L. But then I'll just put words in Coach's mouth. That's the perfect buy opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because I think of your take, and I remember you being very vocal. You're always tapped in, very sharp on the Raiders analysis. So for me, I had a big fear point of being out on Zamir White, thinking like, hey, I might have really missed something. You bring up a good point, though, about the marginal opportunity that players have in the NFL. You spoke to, Mike, talk about casuals and people who are locked in. You're locked in. You mentioned the offensive lineman who got hurt and how that impacts somebody like Zamir White. And it's just crazy how in the NFL, you get some guys get such a fragmented window of opportunity to go out and prove themselves and have their shot. It is just unfortunate that those little things, you know it, Zamir White knows it, and it'll be interesting to see what opportunities Zamir White gets forward in the NFL because the door slams shut quicker than others in the NFL, fair or unfair, which is why when we see guys who are 5th round and later, day 3 or undrafted, when they make it, it really is something special.
Yeah, and the firing of Tom Telesco kind of surprised me just because he had such a great draft in 2024. And even though they moved on from Antonio Pierce, the coaching prospects that are out there as far as like coming in and fully starting over with a restructuring of what the Raiders are with what the Las Vegas Raiders as an organization is, especially with Tom Brady kind of like leading this charge and advising Mark Davis on what to do. I thought that Tom Telesco was in a perfect position to bring in a head coach that he thought that he could work with and then capitalize on his 2024 draft and do it again. And they fired him. This show is going to come out later, but they fired him today. And we're not going to get to see what he does with that number 6 pick. Whether it's, helping to build the team, if they can put together, if they can get continuity on the offensive line, and that's one thing that we see from most of the playoff teams. There's a lot of offensive line continuity on the Ravens, on the Detroit Lions, on the Buffalo Bills. There might be a free agent piece here or there, but there aren't 3 or 4 new pieces every year like you see with some teams, the Raiders being one of those. And that's really hard for a running game to get going, especially very early in the season when guys still don't know what they're doing with signals. We saw even halfway into the year where Jackson Powers Johnson had just come back and they had an opportunity to beat the Chiefs and they couldn't because there was a terrible call by the left guard who had come off the practice squad that day that hit the rookie center early, and Aiden O'Connell didn't know that the snap was coming. So those are the kind of like fine points that only come with continuity, and it's hard to retain that. Then you look at another situation like Ramondre Stevenson. I had Ramondre Stevenson right around the neighborhood that I had Zamir White, and I kept drafting them one after the other, one round, then the next round. And Ramondre Stevenson he did regress back to his career level of efficiency, which thanks to Ryan Heath, we knew that was coming. But for anybody on that Patriots squad to put a good running back season together was difficult with the amount of injuries. Chev and I do a show, Player Profiler Today on Fridays over on Player Profiler News. And we go through the injury reports. And every week with the Patriots, it was just like 12 names and 6 of them were offensive linemen. And it was like, how can you even operate as a team at that point when it's just like a constant shuffling of guys in and out of the lineup? Nobody knows what each other is doing. And, hopefully the Raiders can bring in another head coach and GM and kind of work with what they have now and improve on it.
And trade for the number 1 pick and draft Shedeur Sanders. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah, brother.
They can do that, and then all the crap you see behind me will be Lions gear.
Love that. Love that. Hey, I've got some purple Air Maxes that I'm just waiting to put on if we decide to draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders #1 overall. The #1 pick should be Travis Hunter. End of story. That's not what we're here for, though. I guess it's my turn. Is it my turn for my terrible take?
Do it.
Yup.
It's a 3-parter, okay? So just stay with me here. 1, complete dog shit. I had Rachaad White statted out for over 340 touches this year. That didn't work out at all, did it, boys? That was not correct. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you exactly what I had Rachaad White statted out for, and it was over 1,500 yards from scrimmage. Actually, no, it was over 1,600, almost 1,700 yards from scrimmage. You know who did that? You know who got close to doing that?
Bucky Irving.
Rachaad White. It was his teammate, Bucky Irving.
Bucky Irving.
Yeah. So that was really, really cool. Got that way wrong. Yeah, love that. Also, we're not done here yet. I did some more stat projections way back in 2024, and I came up with I've been a Drake London denier for a long time, but I gave him some respect. I was like, there's a world where he gets absolutely peppered with targets, and he finishes with 130 targets, 84 catches, 1,056 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That's what I had him statted out for. He blew that shit right out of the water. I had him finishing like wide receiver 22. I was like, yeah. And then the cherry on top, boys. The cherry on top here. I was a complete fade on Malik Neighbors. I was like, yeah, he'll get all the targets, but they're Daniel Jones targets. What are those worth? Okay, that's worth somebody walking up to a bull and slapping it on the ass. You're not gonna have a very good time. Okay, wrong again. What does Malik Neighbors do? Goes out, sets the rookie receptions record for receivers and the targets record, all in one fell swoop. Finishes with over 1,200 yards, 108 receptions.
While injured.
Yeah, while injured, pulling his best Jalen Waddle every single week, where he just, I'm dead. I'm going to someone. I'm never going to play again.
There's always something.
And then he comes back and he's like, no, just kidding. Just kidding. Just going to get you like 18.3 fantasy points per game. No big deal. So, yeah, those are mine. They were complete dog shit. I was wrong. I'm still the legendary ball knower, but I did it all right. Okay? So that's where I am. Rachaad White, bell cow, Drake London, only outside of the top 20, Malik Neighbors outside of the top 20, yeah. But we're here. This is a safe space.
So here's a safe question for you, Chev. With Rachaad White, did part of your analysis that you were going through was the team setup, the offense that he was within, that you were ready for him to blossom even more?
The big factor here was the history of usage with Liam Cohen as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So you go to the Los Angeles Rams, where he was the offensive coordinator in 2021, and you look at the way that he used his running backs, which I believe it was Cam Akers coming off the Achilles in the playoffs, just wild inefficiency. I think he averaged like 2.6 yards a carry during that playoff run. And then the back half, I want to say, of 2022, he was, or did he go back to Kentucky? Either way, he had a year with Ray Davis where he absolutely used, just ran Ray Davis into the ground. Old man Ray Davis at the University of Kentucky had over 270 touches. There was no indication that he was going to make it a split backfield. What we did not account for, because as a prospect, I loved Bucky Irving. I was like, me and a buddy of mine, we talk about all the time. When Oregon crushed Colorado last year, I was like, dude, that running back from Oregon, he's real good. And then I became a complete fade on him because I got way, way too horned up for Rachaad White. Bucky was just better. He took the job. He wasn't given the job. He took the job. And that's with Rachaad White averaging a career high 4.26 yards per carry.
Well, I would say you're a lot like that meme where the guy is like digging for the gold and the person at the top goes away, turns around. The other person, they keep going because the gold is right behind there. You're saying that you're far off in your take. I contend that you were this close to having the enormity of that being a correct call with Rachaad White, just that it was this close with Bucky Irving proximity being the guy who ended up getting it in the role. So all your analysis lined up with Liam Cohen. Everything that you laid out, if you told me that all in August, I'd be like, yeah, you know what? I got to subscribe to some Rachaad White. So good process.
I mean, it's sound process. The whole point here, I think, for all of us is that this was not the year to do a whole bunch of research and get into the weeds and come up with 1,000 different ways to do it correctly and follow trends that have held for years upon time. This was a time to play fantasy football like it was fucking 2010. Okay. You go running back heavy, you get your running backs, and then you just, outside of Jamar Chase,
figure it out.
Piss away receivers, take those guys in the middle rounds, and then you say, all right, cool, I've got Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. I'm going to win every week.
Yeah, blinders on for all of the expert chitter chatter. We find ourselves falling into certain traps, like looking at you can deep dive on running back situations and find where most running backs, if they're drafted at a higher draft capital than the incumbent running back, will eventually win the job. I don't think that was the case with Bucky Irving and Rachaad White. I think Rachaad White was coming off an historic year, a top 5 finish, and Bucky Irving looked like garbage at the combine. That combined with the fact that he was a rookie and he's undersized, he had every single red flag that you could throw at somebody coming into a running back room that was led by a top 5 finish the year before. Again, we didn't see that coming. People who said that Bucky Irving was going to be better than Rachaad White were throwing darts. And it was not based on anything that was tangible.
No,
so other than Bucky's film.
Yeah, people. No.
There was some coach speak. There was some coach speak that was out there that you might have been able to
even then in week 1, Bucky didn't get meaningful carries until the game was out of hand in the fourth quarter. Granted, he did average like 8 yards a carry, but that's not the point. He got those in garbage time. So I was like, yeah, dude, of course. Like I even went back and broke the film down and I was like, yeah, it's like, hey, they didn't even have Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne in the game at the same time. Like he's running against like the guys who, play on field goal block and stuff. So I don't give that credence. And then in week 2, it was like, well, I mean, of course, Rachaad White's not going to do well against the Detroit Lions. They haven't allowed like a 100-yard rusher since they were 1-7 back in 2022. Actually, it stopped. Fun fact, it stopped the week before they played Saquon Barkley. Then they beat Saquon Barkley to hell. And then from that week forward, they've been the Detroit Lions we know now. Outside of Kenneth Walker and somebody else. Kenneth Walker rushing for 3 touchdowns on Monday Night Football. I know that because it beat me in a game in a league one time. But yeah, so yeah, my biggest takeaway here is don't fade prodigious talents like Malik Neighbors and Drake London. I still don't think that Drake London is like a top 10 talent, but if you're going to get 160 targets, you can't. I mean, with a quarterback like Michael Penix, I am now aggressively in Drake London mode.
So it would be interesting to run an analysis on who the first wide receiver taken in the last 10 drafts were, and then how many of those finish as top 10 wide receivers this year.
This year?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because Drake London was the first wide receiver off the board in his draft class. Marvin Harrison Jr. was the first wide receiver off the board in his draft class. You have other examples.
who was the first receiver off the board in 2023? Was it Quentin Johnson? Or was it JSN? Who went first? It went. I know.
Was it
Jason.
Yeah, so JSN.
Jason Flowers, then Quentin.
And then Addison, right? It was like 4 in a clone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you go back and look at draft history, guys that were taken as the first wide receiver off the board are going to be have a much greater chance of hitting in the top 10, and Drake London is one of those. He's always had that talent. He coming out, he was a little bit small. Oh, he's so skinny, but like the NFL collectively, 32 scouting departments. He was the first choice of all of them. That's a lot of brain power, and he was the first pick. So you got to give some credence to that. I know it wasn't George.
No, I listen. I do give credence to that. The problem was, like, you had receivers. I'm not gonna say his name. I'm not gonna do it, especially not after last week. We're gonna be quiet. We're gonna eat our humble pie until I have a reason to talk shit again, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. But for right now, the Drake London apologists, y'all got it. You've even got me trying to make a plus EV move to acquire Drake London now before he gets the full Penix. Okay, so
well, a funny thing happened on the way to being the first wide receiver drafted off the board. I tend to look at them as overrated. So no Drake London shares, no Marvin Harrison Jr. shares, because I can find value in other places. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
I'm not a Drake London apologist.
There's never been value associated with Marvin Harrison. You thought that you were paying Lamborghini prices and you were getting an F1 car. It was like, joke's on you guys. I just got the wide receiver 1 overall at wide receiver 10 or whatever he was.
Right.
So
yeah, and typically whoever is the most hyped, whoever is, the leader at the position, when you're going into a draft, number 1 ADP is rarely, like, it's never a good value, and you can always do more. If you're in a tradable situation, you can always trade out of that spot where that player is available, because somebody's always going to be willing to pay to get there, because there's going to be half of your league slobbering to get that Drake London out of that draft or that Marvin Harrison Jr. out of that draft. And it's very rare that you find somebody with a talent level like Jackson Smith and Jigba or Malik Neighbors, where you draft them is actually what they can provide for you at a certain level. Now, JSN didn't do it in his first season. That was largely a symptom of the structure that he was in Seattle and his landing spot.
Waldron, we know.
Right. but very rarely that guy turns out to be that guy. Even Justin Jefferson was like a week 6 waiver wire pickup. You know what I mean?
Week 4.
Week 3.
So, in my longest running home league, he wasn't drafted because he's a Vikings wide receiver that was a middle first round draft pick that wasn't starting. And a guy picks him up and puts him. We had COVID IR spots at the time, and he puts him in the COVID IR spot, even though he doesn't have COVID. And the commissioner sees it and is like, "What do you want to do? Do you want to drop somebody?" He goes, "No, I'll just drop him." And then the next week is he plays the Tennessee Titans. He has the 70-yard touchdown, becomes Justin Jefferson, gets scooped up off waivers. The same guys had him now for almost 5 years, or for however long. Justin, this is his 4th year or 5th year. Was this his 4th year?
It's one of those.
Yeah, one of those. But yeah, the same guys had him since then, and we make fun of that guy all the time for that. So,
well, it reminds me of the concept, Biggs. You mentioned how like half the league is going to be slobbering over the number 1 wide receiver in each class, right? And you can take advantage. It makes me think of when you go into a car shop or you try and buy a car, right? The biggest mistake you can do is say to the finance people, "Look, I want the payment to be $350. Can you make it happen?" And they go back and they work something that's going to just kill you on interest and on your payments. But sure, they can make it work. That's what it's like. You can take advantage of that principle where half the league is into that top tier receiver. You got people all this rookie season who are trying to acquire Marvin Harrison Jr. from you. Hey, whatever I got to do to finance it. If I can make the payment this, That's fine. Oh, 7 years. Oh, 8
Right.
years, whatever the loan is, length of the loan, add it on. You can take advantage and you can milk it on people.
When
Right.
really those guys are in the back, not adjusting anything. They're just like
No.
chatting about like going to the bar the night before.
They're talking about which rookie receiver they're going to take in their fantasy draft.
Well, I'm glad that we all got to go over our misses. Now let's move on to our stock up, stock down. Or
Wait a minute. No, wait a minute.
minute.
We got one left. There's one more.
Oh shit! Wait a minute. I should probably own up to my shit too. All right. Well, headed into this season, I guess I was pretty damn high on Anthony Richardson being one of my biggest breakout picks. The blend of his size, athleticism, the ability to rack up those rushing yards and potential, for a significant improvement as a passer. 6'4", 244. He had rare speed, looked poised to be a top fantasy asset, especially after posting a QB4, QB2 performance in 2 full games that he played in 2023. I envision 2024 where Richardson rushing production would be elite, even if his passing didn't dramatically improve. The combination of rushing yards, the weapons around him like Jonathan Taylor, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, and Adonai Mitchell, they would propel him to QB1 status. Unfortunately, that reality of his second season didn't line up to those expectations. His 2024 campaign has been a harsh reminder on how volatile young quarterbacks can be. Through 15 games, he completed just 47% of his passes for 1,800 yards with 8 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. His rushing numbers, although they were solid, 499 for 6 touchdowns, but not quite the game-changing fantasy production I had hoped for. The biggest blow to his outlook was his inconsistency, including being benched for 2 games and missing the last 2 of his spasms. So to make matters worse, the Colts offense struggled. Richardson's overall completion percentages was below, and what needed to be solid wasn't there. As I look back, his fantasy outlook feels more like a miss on my part. While he's got raw tools, his poor passing efficiency, high turnover rate, and injury woes, limited his ability to deliver consistent fantasy production. The Colts with an 8-7 record in games with Richardson starting speaks to his potential, but also it's a significant room for growth. His completion percentage needs to improve, and it's going to be looming this offseason. They're going to be bringing in somebody to probably put some pressure on him, and he's going to be in some competition here for that QB1 status for the Colts next year. So big whiff on my behalf, and I had him in a lot of redraft leagues for sure this year, and those leagues I definitely suffered in. How about y'all?
Don't forget, he's still on that Josh Allen career arc.
Yeah, I mean,
right on it.
He could be a guy that you could definitely maybe make some value off of this offseason, but I just don't see him processing things, at the speed. I guess just the inexperience in college. He hasn't played the amount of games. When you look at these guys like Bo Nix and Penix and Jaden Daniels, for that matter, who've got a lot of college starts, these are the guys that are doing well their rookie seasons. And, Richardson, injury plagued, and he's not processing there, so it's going to take him some time, and I'm not sure if the Colts are going to have that patience with him.
I'm a Florida fan, so I've gotten to watch an absurd, as much of Anthony Richardson in his limited sample size as a quarterback as anyone. And so coming in, I was initially off of him because I was like, he's way too raw. This is a developmental deal. No matter how you slice it, he hasn't played enough quarterback in order to be able to handle the things that come with being a quarterback. I liken it to Mitch Trubisky, made 13 college starts, and then he goes out and he's more athletic than you think he is. He has his future GM, dressing up incognito to go watch him at the Senior Bowl or, whatever weird thing that dude did. But that was in my head. And then you see the 4 games and you see I mean, the rushing floor is absolutely tantalizing. And then everybody starts throwing the Cam Newton things out there. What people, the biggest miss in process was realizing that Cam Newton played 3 or 4 years of college football. He got jettisoned from Florida because he couldn't beat out Tebow after being a 5-star recruit, goes to Blinn, goes to junior college, wins a national championship, then comes back into the national media landscape. Not only like wins the Heisman and is the best quarterback in college football, but then wins a national championship. He leads Auburn with no pros to a national championship. So he played quarterback at a high level. Anthony Richardson never did that. And that's a thing that I feel like we all missed. And then we were willing to ignore that because the sample of what we got was an incredible rushing floor. And the things as a passer we were willing to ignore because it's like, well, he doesn't have to throw it that much if he's going to run for 2 touchdowns every game. And it's like, well, guys, nobody in the history of ever has run for 2 touchdowns in a game, much less a quarterback. And then the quarterback got knocked out trying to do that. So it's like, they're probably going to tone that down a little bit. And then you get Shane Steichen selling us wolf tickets saying, hey, man, we're going to treat him like Steph Curry when it comes to shooting threes. That's what he does good. That's what we should do. And I bought in like a dumbass. And I was like, yeah, you know what I'm going to do? Big brain JC, going to take him 3rd overall in a freaking startup. So, like, I was bought in. I got the wool pulled over my eyes. Now, I don't even know if he's going to be a starter for much longer. He has a lot of work to do. Like, you hit the nail on the head talking about processing. All of the high-level things that come with being a franchise quarterback, he's never really had to do. The offense at Florida is not one that's necessarily conducive to like having, making multiple reads and multiple decisions. I mean, he had Slick Rick Pearsall, and he had his best season after Anthony Richardson left. So there's just not a lot to go on when you're evaluating him for what he's done versus what he might be capable of.
You hit the nail on the head, right
Trey
at the end,
Lance.
especially with Ricky Pearsall. Like, when I'm looking at Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, any type of receiving options for the Colts, and I'm just thinking, yeah, get me Joe Flacco over Anthony Richardson. Like, we are getting ecstatic about their prospects, and putting Josh Downs in our lineups, that's a big problem.
Exactly. Like, that's not where you want to be. Like,
you mentioned the Steichen thing, and this is the dude who had a big hand in bringing Jalen Hurts around and making him a thing, right? And and he was the dude handpicked to carve out AR and to bring him along, and it's just not been there. So that's kind of concerning to me. And the other thing you mentioned, like, great, he's going to run for 2 touchdowns, but he can't pass for shit. And we're playing fantasy football. They're not. If you can't pass for shit, you aren't going to have a job very long.
Right.
Yeah. In 2023, I had the 4th pick in our rookie draft, and my buddy's wife had the 2nd pick. Right. So I fully planned on taking Anthony Richardson. My buddy's a Colts fan. I traded a quarterback away for the 3rd pick. I want to say it was Jalen Hurts, so that I could get that 3rd pick and take Anthony Richardson. Or maybe it was the 4th. Dude traded with his wife from the 5th to the 2nd to jump me and grab Anthony Richardson.
I mean, like, the rush, like the everything is there. I mean, obviously, if he doesn't go and absolutely, just liquefy the combine, he's the heaviest quarterback to run 4.4. He has a 40-inch vertical. His arm, I mean, he has Jamarcus Russell level arm talent, but the problem is he has Jamarcus Russell level decision making.
Right.
Like, that's where we're stuck here. Like, between the ears, he doesn't have enough reps to be a great NFL. Like, an average NFL passer right now. And to be in now, we've given you the medicine. Now let's talk about it. Let's talk a little bit about where it could get better. His receivers absolutely threw him under the bus quite a bit this year. Like, let's be totally honest about that. They absolutely threw him under the bus. They were not making tough catches. They were not making contested catches. And when, there's some layup opportunities that they don't have. If you've watched the Colts play, I watched the Colts probably 4 or 5 times this year with Anthony Richardson. And there were very few times where there was an easy button for him in the offense to just get the ball out of his hands, to get him into rhythm, to make things simpler. And that's doing a disservice to a quarterback as well. I mean, like, if you ask Bo Nix to do elite level year 12 Drew Brees stuff, he's going to look like he sucks too. So you got to, like, Sean Payton did a great job of dumbing it down to digestible. And then it's like, okay, we can build on this. Well, like, I feel like Shane Steichen started on the second floor and was like, shit, man, we'll fill in the foundation later. And
that's surprising because Steichen
is the quarterback guy.
Right. And you hear a lot about it. They talk a lot about coaches cutting off half the field for a rookie quarterback or a very young quarterback. Yes. Make your first 2 reads and move on. And you would think that Steichen would do that. Well, before we move on, do you want to know who I drafted instead of because I missed out on Anthony Richardson?
Is it going to maximize the pain of this segment?
No.
Tim Tebow.
JSN and Zamir Gibbs.
Oh, beautiful. Hey, sometimes it's the deals that don't work out.
I was so mad when he made that trade. I was like, he's only doing it with his wife because he knows that I want Anthony Richardson. I was so mad.
That's a weird reason to do it with his wife.
Hey, we'll just
baby.
let that hang there.
Hey, baby, Brendan wants to draft Anthony Richardson. You want to go have some business time?
Just do it with your wife, right?
Hey, Chev brought up
Anthony Richardson, right?
All right. Before we get
up Jamarcus Russell, I just want to say, never forget when he was sent home tape to watch, was asked when he came back the next day what he saw, and he gave some bullshit answer only to be told it was a blank tape.
Yeah, there was no DVD in the box.
Now, is Anthony Richardson maybe it's not Jamarcus Russell level.
Not even close.
Is Anthony Richardson fully committed to be the best player he can be?
I mean, we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out probably during OTAs and preseason next year. I mean, to Josh Allen's credit, Josh Allen did the work to improve his weaknesses, which seems like that shouldn't be a foreign concept to people who are used to dedicating their lives to being the best at a particular sport. But also, when you've been a physical freak your whole life, you probably never really had to go like, I need to go the extra mile. So that's the one thing I'm looking at. It's like, does he look sharper in OTAs? Are we hearing those positive reports? Coming into training camp, are the receivers, is there a buzz around him having more command of the offense? There's buzzwords that we can pick up on and say hey, he might have taken that next step. And then when he gets into the preseason, I watched that Broncos game and I knew I was screwed. And then I just tried to fake it until I could make it, until he tapped out. From that point till he tapped out of the game against who was it? Anyway, that point where he tapped out, I was like, we are screwed.
Well, two things real quick, and then we'll move on because Grindberg wants to. Number one, I don't mean to sound condescending, coach, but that is a lot of noise, and we have to be able to separate the signal. But it does remind me of I played high school football. I grew up with this kid who was always the biggest and strongest in our class. He wound up being a tight end for our football team, got a full ride scholarship to Cal. But even as early as 7th and 8th grade basketball, I knew this was the guy that was not going to do the work. Every time we had to do something strenuous in basketball practice, he had an injury. he was never willing to work, and he succeeded through his senior year of high school, just being physically superior to everybody, right? So he goes to Cal, he's a freshman, red shirts, comes out his sophomore year, his redshirt freshman year. He's supposed to earn snaps. He gets overtaken by a freshman tight end who becomes Tony Gonzalez. And nobody's ever heard of Matt Johnson. You have to be willing to put in the work. And that's where the rubber hits the road. And to that point, Anthony Richardson has never had to put in the work. He's always gotten by on his running ability and his ability to throw the ball as far as he can and have somebody run underneath it. He's never had to actually go through the reps to learn how to be a great football player. So we have to see over the next couple seasons that he's actually doing that. So take it away, Grindberg.
No, I just that's a great take, and I think you nailed it there. We really have to see him progress, but is he going to have that opportunity down the line to be able to do that? You know, like these quarterbacks are on such tight leashes. You know, he's got that first round pedigree. Obviously the Colts are going to have to, you know, give him another shot here, but I'm not sure how big that leash is going to be moving forward. Obviously with that top 4 pick, but yeah, I love that take, bigz. Guys, we're an hour in. Let's get into our stock ups and see where we get from there, and maybe we'll wait for our stock downs for the next episode. Let's start it off with Coach. Who's your stock up?
Hey, my stock up, Ricky Pearsall cooked the Lions on Monday Night Football. Stands out as well that Pearsall balled out on championship week. Ricky Pearsall is a first-round draft pick, wide receiver on the week, with 28.7 fantasy points, 10 targets, 8 catches, and a touchdown. The next week, Ricky Pearsall followed up with 18.9 fantasy points as wide receiver 14, 6 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown.
Nice.
With the coldest celebration you'll ever see. We cling to Malik Neighbors, BTJ, Ladd McConkey, and tend to anchor forward the narrative of who is a hit and a miss in each draft class. Ricky Pearsall has a lost season and was drafted in what looked like a deep and clogged wide receiver room. Of course, Pearsall had adversity off the field when he got shot. Pretty cool story there of him wanting to link up with the perpetrator and grant forgiveness. Incredible. The thinking of the 49ers at the time, though, drafting Pearsall, was that he fit into the team's long-term plans. Just maybe not the immediate plans. No rush, right? Pearsall gave the 49ers flexibility in future years. Spot Track has listed 2025 as a potential out for Deebo Samuel, with Deebo Samuel's 2026 age 30 season as a void year. Measure this against Brandon Ayuk's projected recovery, and Ricky Pearsall may bloom big time in 2025. You won't have to pay highway robbery prices for Pearsall, but these last 2 games and puff pieces in the offseason will have Pearsall stock up. With no playoffs for the 49ers, these 2 games will stick in fantasy gamers' heads when clicking the button to draft Ricky Pearsall. So on Keep Trade Cut, things that come up even. Pearsall versus Cortland Sutton. I lean Cortland Sutton. Pearsall versus Tucker Kraft. I lean Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall versus Michael Pittman. Give me Ricky. Pearsall. Yeah, tell me.
Can I throw out a legitimate scenario I was just texting a buddy about the other day involving Ricky?
Yep.
Potential trade. He receives Ricky in a second this year, mid-second. He sends a 27 first and a 26 third.
Well, the 27 is far away, but we're talking. Could that be Jeremiah Smith?
Yes. If that pick could potentially be Jeremiah Smith, I'm doing that.
Yes.
You're taking the pick side?
Yes.
For the
I do want to point out before we get I understand Ricky Pearsall's draft capital, but Ricky Pearsall had the second lowest unscore out of that model going into the 2024 season. The only one lower is Xavier Legette. Now, I've talked on the show before about how it's easy to miss on guys who suddenly get an opportunity. It's less likely for somebody like Ricky Pearsall to get an opportunity than it is for Jamari Thrash based on talent level. However, because of landing spot, Ricky Pearsall got an opportunity, Jamari Thrash didn't. Analytically, Jamari Thrash is much, much better as a wide receiver than Ricky Pearsall, but Ricky Pearsall has the opportunity. So I'm going to be closely monitoring what happens. I want to see Debo gone. I want to see Brandon Ayuk have an elongated rehab period, and then I will change my tune on Ricky Pearsall, but not before then.
So I think essentially it's a stock up for Ricky Pearsall, and it's twofold. If you're in on him, you keep. If you're out on him, you have a chance to, cash out on him because maybe you drafted him at value or at ADV, right? Artificial dynasty value based on what your opponents might be interested in. Hey, you clung to where you were in the rookie draft. Well, here's a first round draft pick on a proficient offense. Down the line, I'll be able to sell Ricky Pearsall. So with that thinking, here we are these last 2 weeks. And like Big said, if it plays out with a longer Brandon Ayuk recovery, and we'll see what happens with Deebo Samuel, it could become a lot more interesting. Let's just say with the stock up on Ricky Pearsall, the market in Dynasty will become more liquid.
Yeah, and to the point of the exercise, Ricky Pearsall being I am surprised they took him over Jacob Cowing. I will not own any Ricky Pearsall shares, period. His stock is up because I'm interested and looking with an interested eye now. That's up.
Yeah, that's the definition of up for sure. Schultzy, let's get you into your stock up, buddy.
For me, it's just this 24 rookie wide receiver class in general, man. It was touted as a solid deep class, but I don't think there was anyone out there that was out here saying we were going to walk out of this draft with 3 legitimate home runs, right? And Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. and Ladd. All 3 are set up to just be absolute studs for a long time. Like I said, I don't think a world where anybody would have sat down and said, we're going to get 3 bona fide superstars out of this receiver class. Now the top was very strong, and you look past these 3 guys and you still got Marvin and Rome. Biggs touched on it earlier. 2 very talented, very good receivers getting bad balls thrown their way. So they could be on the rise too, right? You got Xavier Worthy. Chiefs are starting to figure this dude out. The usage is coming up for him. Looks like they're going to really be able to pair him with Rashee Rice next year in a really fun way. We just talked Ricky Pearsall. You move back to Jalen McMillan, who was producing, right? Keon Coleman had a few flashes. You get into some sleepers here. We even got some real potential, in my opinion, sitting on Adonai Mitchell. I just saw a stat, yards per route run versus man on him this season. It was very good. Jermaine Burton, there's still sleepers in this class. There's stock up. Now, I know the Jermaine Burton one's a little shaky there, but there's still talent there that could potentially be moving up. We've got studs that are rising. We've got second level dudes who have potential to go up. We've got sleepers who are potentially rising here. This is an absolutely loaded, deep class. Blown away by it.
Yep. In some of the analytical models, there are some guys who fell so far out based on situation. Think of all of the third-year breakouts that are going to happen out of this class. And you know who nailed it? Was Pat McAfee a couple years ago. He pointed out you have this entire culture of I forgot the name of the actual channel, but there's a channel that I watch every once in a while. They got guys going up, DBs and wide receivers running wide receivers routes with a guy throwing balls to the wide receivers, and they give $50,000 to the guy that eventually wins all of the reps, whatever.
Oh, destroying?
Yes, destroying.
Yeah.
So you have this entire culture of young kids who are growing up. They're playing flag football. Wide receiver is a diva position. It's a spotlight position. there are guys who are doing things in as far as like having route running acuity at the junior high school level that are far beyond what guys of my generation, the late 80s, early 90s generation, even the Jerry Rice before then, guys through the 90s and the 2000s, these kids are doing way more. And they are starting to come out as the YouTube generation of wide receiver. Then on top of that, you have 2020 and the pandemic. You got kids that missed a year of high school, or they wound up being 5th or 6th year seniors. Not that is anything in as far as prospects are concerned, but now they're competing against older guys earlier. I mean, there are so many elements that this was a huge class. It was deep from round 1 to 7 across the board at every position. And the wide receivers of this class absolutely benefited. The wide receivers coming out over the next few years are just going to keep getting better and better. It's crazy.
I likened this class prior to the draft to the 2014 class, like the 2014 wide receiver class. If you go back and look at that, it's one of the deepest classes, one of the deepest and most complete classes of wide receivers who flashed incredible ceilings, like Allen Robinson, Devon. You had the late age breakouts, the later breakouts like Devontae Adams. People don't even remember now because he's a Hall of Famer, but his first 2 years were not very productive. And it wasn't because he sucked. It was because he was stuck behind. I mean, it's almost like the Ricky Pearsall narrative. He was stuck behind Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb for 2 years. Jordy tears his ACL his second year. He's battling an ankle injury, comes out, averages like 8 yards a catch and sucks, and people write him off. And then in 2016, he has 12 touchdowns when Jordy comes back and finishes with close to 1,000 yards. And then he starts the run, and it's like, oh, how did we? And so it was almost like a 5th year breakout to get the full Devontae Adams. And because we're in such a microwave culture now, you could cash out on, an asset like that way early because you aren't letting them fully bloom. It's not going to be, you're only going to have so many Jamar Chases and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr.'s. Most of these guys are going to take a slower path to relevance. I mean, let's use a guy we talked about earlier in the episode, Drake London, for example. Like, those first 2 years were not great. 108 targets, 117 targets, barely clearing 900 yards as a high water mark, and really, really crappy quarterback play. Like, it doesn't always happen in year one. And I would like to encourage anybody that, like, if your evaluation on a player is strong, don't bail on them because it doesn't look the way it looked for Brian Thomas Jr. or Malik Neighbors coming out of the gate. Don't bail on Marvin Harrison Jr. right now. One, you're not going to get equitable value for what he could be. Two, like, he could go this offseason, figure it out with Kyler and be a 1,400-yard receiver, and you just sold him for a mid-first that turns into Luther Burden. Like,
See, I call this the Darnell Mooney, Curtis Samuel paradigm.
Yeah.
And were you talking about Jacksonville legend, 11-year veteran, and current Detroit Lion wide receiver, Allen Robinson?
I most certainly was. Yes.
I cannot wait for him to get a playoff or Super Bowl touchdown. It's going to be one of the greatest days of my life.
Yeah. Like, I fully bought into the year 2 breakout of Allen Robinson. So I got to enjoy that 2015 season.
300 points? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. 80 for 14.
Man, I was in on him and I loved it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
I
that
had
was like,
guy in the league. He was like, who is that guy? Like, you got this random guy. Who is it? He's nobody.
Yeah,
like,
dude. Yeah. So I was in an auction draft with my buddy, same league where Justin Jefferson was dropped. And a guy was like, $20 for Allen Robinson. And everybody was like, oh, and I was like, 40. And like, oh, you're an idiot. And then it happened. So yeah, I felt great about that. But yeah, this class, to close the point. This 2024 class is probably, in my opinion, going to end up a lot like that 2014 class, where there's pros littered everywhere. I mean, we're not even talking about Allen Hurns, who was a solid guy before he got his ankle, before he Chris Godwin. We're not talking about guys like that. There were pros everywhere in that class. I mean, yep. Jordan Matthews, who's playing tight end now, had a couple great years. Like, this class is that deep, and I think it'll reflect just like 2014 has represented itself over time.
That 2014 draft gave the Jaguars Marquise Lee, Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns.
Yeah.
Raiders legend Marquise Lee.
That
Raiders
almost got him a Super Bowl. So
hell yeah, Blake Bortles.
All right, let's go, Biggs. What do you got?
So I'm gonna go with I play a lot of dynasty leagues, and it's 2025, and what I meant to say was I play a lot of Devy leagues, campus Canton, developmental leagues, what have you. So I roster college players, and it's also 2025, and we're starting to do rookie analysis. So I'm talking about a guy who's currently playing in the game that we're watching on all of our TVs right now while this is being recorded. And that's tight end from Penn State, Tyler Warren. And they're playing Notre Dame right now, but in the last playoff game, he did nothing less than go out and get 6 catches for 63 yards and 2 touchdowns in a playoff game against a pretty good defense. And Penn State rolled. His stock is totally up for me. He's currently sitting as my tight end 1 in the class, where I'm kind of waffling back and forth between him and Harold Fannin. I had Oronde Gadsden pegged as the tight end 1 of this class a couple years ago, and he's kind of fallen, which happens often. And then the kid from Texas, I loved Amari Knee-Black as a tight end value in Devy and C2C this last year, but he was absolutely passed up on the. He transferred from Alabama to Texas ostensibly to have a job, and the kid at Texas passed him up on the depth chart. So I'm still in on Amari Knee-Black, but for my 2025 class, I'm ranking Tyler Warren as my tight end 1, and his stock is totally up right now. Draft him in the second round in your rookie drafts.
Hey, and to that point, you're going to get the vividness bias, which is going to work out for his value in these playoff games where he's eating. I don't know the stats per se, but I've been looking up at the screen and seeing Tyler Warren continue to make big plays, big chunk plays. He can really do it all. So right there with you, I think if the fantasy community is locked into these playoff games, they'll tell exactly what you're talking about, Biggs. Good call.
He's currently 5 for 72.
Oh, when I looked, he was like 4 for 40. So he must have had a
he had a nice he on this drive he had a big chunk.
But I like vividness bias rather than vividness fallacy.
Oh yeah, we'll stay biased, especially if it favors us.
There you go. I love it. Good call, Biggs. I liked him too, and he's got a good frame, and he's a target monster right now. So I like his prospect headed into 2025 here, and landing spot will depict some things, and if he can get a spot right away, there it is.
My RB3 just scored a touchdown.
Yeah, Singleton, baby.
There you go, Singleton.
Have him for anytime touchdown tonight.
Love it. All right, legendary ball knower. Who's your stock up, my man?
Jameson Williams. So I was there were not a lot of historical comps for guys to have a breakout after doing as little as Jameson Williams did his first 2 years. But you've got to know a little bit of ball and understand the madman that is Dan Campbell to read between the lines. And everything changed for Jameson Williams when he bought into the Lions culture. And it wasn't a reception he made or a play that he made for himself. He blocked downfield for, I believe, Jameer Gibbs on a long touchdown run. and Dan Campbell highlighted that in the press conference post-game. And from that moment forward, they started incorporating Jameson Williams into the offense more and more. Obviously, last year, Tim Patrick was taking most of the reps as a full-time player, but they let him go and did not bring anybody else in. They didn't sign Josh Reynolds, re-sign Josh Reynolds, or do anything like that. And to me, I said Tim Patrick earlier. I meant Josh Reynolds. To me, that signaled that they were ready to allow Jameson Williams to play a full-time role, but he was still going to get all the gadget touches he got. He was just going to be able to do real receiver stuff. And if you watch the Bama film, you knew he could do real receiver stuff because that's what the hell he did, when he went for 1,500 yards as and his only year playing getting full-time snaps as a collegiate athlete. And so for me, I'm excited to see where this goes. I've held him in spots that I've had him for a long time, and I refused to give up on him because it was like, man, if he comes out and he sucks, cool. I'll just, he'll die on my roster. But if he's a thing, this offensive ecosystem is elite enough to where he could get 90 targets and finish with 800 yards and 9 touchdowns because he scores 7 50-yard touchdowns. And I don't know how many touchdowns he had this year, but, I know he had the 80-yarder during the playoffs, and I know he finished with over 1,000 yards. So that's not the ceiling for him. If they open it up and they're going to throw more, or if Ben Johnson goes somewhere else and they hire a pass-happy OC, we're looking at potentially 80 catches for 12 or 1,300 yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns with Amon-Ra St. Brown getting 100 to 110 catches a year. He's supplanted Sam Laporta as the secondary option in the offense, and I'm stuck on that. So, yeah, my stock up is Jameson Williams, third-year breakout. Like we just talked about, it doesn't always have to happen like Jamar Chase for it to be a correct call. Just trust your evaluation process. And if you don't have an evaluation process and you're playing Dynasty, you're just giving money away. So, yeah.
Or you can watch the show.
Or that.
I do want to point out on Chev's side, Grindberg and I just did the undrafted podcast with Jax Falcone that dropped this last week. The episode title is Amon-Ra's Mustache. And in it, we did our end of season awards. And my 2024 award winner for my 180-degree turn, meaning the guy that I was out on and now I'm 100% bought in on, and I'm going to be targeting in every platform that I play in 2025 is Jameson Williams. So good call, Chev.
Thank you, sir. I wish I got more of him. I was splitting between him and Christian Watson in best ball, and I ended up with way more Christian Watson, which sucked.
The knock on him coming out and was so he was injured coming out as a rookie. He had missed some time, and that was like predictable. But the deeper analysis showed that the only reason he was at Alabama was because he couldn't cut it at Ohio State when Chris Olave was there and Marvin Harrison Jr. comes in as a freshman and Jameson Williams leaves because he wanted playing time and he goes to Alabama. I think they won the national championship that year, but he got hurt in the game and they had John Mechie. So
they lost because him and Mechie got hurt.
Right. So they had won the year before or something like that, but he got hurt. And so it was like, okay, he's coming out, he's hurt. And also he wasn't as good as the Ohio State wide receivers that are currently coming out. Otherwise he wouldn't have transferred to Alabama. That was the deeper narrative that was out there. Right.
The crazy part about it is all the Ohio State guys now, like people will ask them about Jameson and they're like, yeah, no, the coaches did not give him a shot to do anything besides run clear out routes.
Right. But it does kind of go to show that anybody that Brian Hartline recruits
yes,
has something.
Yes.
And, you know, I mean, there are some guys out there like Antwi who aren't going to make it. The guy that transferred to South Carolina, not going to make it. But the guys that stick and some of the guys that transfer on and go on to careers somewhere else, they're Brian Hartline guys. And
Yeah.
I don't like helmet scouting, but I will scout Ohio State Brian
There's-
Hartline recruits at wide receiver.
Don't make that's a very important note. Don't make the game harder than it is. If you see a receiver from LSU or Ohio State, they're probably pretty good. I mean, of course you're going to have your Terrace Marshalls and your Raiders legend Terrace Marshall. You're going to have a couple Terrace Marshalls thrown in there. But
Butte.
Yeah, Keisha. Oh, hey, Butte came along pretty nice in the back half of the season now. There's 5 touchdown catches, 6 touchdown catches, whatever it was. I mean, at one point he was a first round. He had a first round grade in the 2023 draft. And then they started throwing to Malik Neighbors, and it was like, wait, this guy's better. But it's not a knock on Butte.
Entering 2023, Butte was supposed to be the wide receiver 1.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like there was something there that led you to this conclusion. It wasn't just the fact that his name's Butte and he played for LSU.
I mean, it might have been a little factor.
The booty was a factor.
The booty factor.
Sometimes you can't deny the booty, right? You can't resist.
Yeah.
One note on JMO. He has 4 top 12 games this year, weeks 1, 11, 16, 17. Can we accordion that out? It's pretty spread apart. Can that truncate tighter for more consistent weeks? That would just be my question that I'm looking into for JMO forward. But like you say, Chev, bye.
I feel like moving forward with the new offensive coordinator, they're going to look at that and say he can be a higher component in this offense and be more, and it'll lead to consistency.
The biggest question here for everybody, and mainly bigz, is when you strip all that Raider gear out of your room for the Shadur Sanders shares, what Detroit Lion jersey is going up in your room first? Is it going to be, Nevada boy Jared Goff, or your Zamir bigz, or is it now JMO? Because you're speaking highly of all 3 of these guys.
No, it's Jared Goff. Hashtag Nevada boys.
I love it. All right, let's finish this show off with my stock up here, and it's going to be Puka Nacua. And how
is his stock up?
Well, because now he's firmly, to me, implanted as a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. I mean, it's tough not to put him up there. He's poised to ascend into elite status. He's got the ability to produce at a high level, and it showed early in his career. His rookie season, broke a lot of records, and now he's able to eclipse Cooper Kupp. Now he's going to be able to, continue that streak. He's been awesome. 88 yards per game in his career 28 games. I mean, that's prolific. That's elite status. 1,500 yards as a rookie, 104 passing yards per game in his last 8 games. He's showing elite status comparable to, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Nacua's career average of 88 yards per game is close to elite numbers posted by these types of players. Nacua is rapidly becoming, that fantasy darling that we're all expecting in dynasty leagues where long-term potential is king. His elite production is already on display, and he's got the right ecosystem to support his growth. Nacua is primed to break records and deliver his elite production for years to come. And I just think that, his stock is still going up even at that really high price that he's going. And I just think the fate of Cooper Kupp in the last little while is going to continue to ascend, and he may not be with the Rams next year. And Nacua is an elite target earner, so I love his situation.
I want to say that 88 yards per game is higher than like Randy Moss, Jerry Rice. I'm going to look that up while you guys talk.
88 yards per
It
game.
would be. I know off the top of my head, Julio at one point was at like 80, 87 point something, and it was the highest ever.
It's insane. 28 games at that pace is pretty darn good. And he's missed a couple games due to injury, and maybe that type of play might, something that we're gonna have to, foreshadow for years to come. Him missing a handful of games every year because of the
just
way
stat him out for 14 games and call it a day.
Yeah.
Mike, question.
Yes.
Would you rather have Puka or Nico Collins in Dynasty?
Puka.
That's strong. That is strong. Mm-hmm. I can't disagree with it.
Right.
But I don't know which side of that coin I fall on. Now I have a ton of Nico Collins is the reason that I would ask this, because at this point, like at a certain point in the season, the answer was definitely Nico. And now that we're getting removed further from that, like that white hot start for Nico and the injury period for Puka.
Yeah.
I feel like there's going to be a massive like shift to where Puka is unquestionably much more valuable.
And he's 2 full years younger. Like 2 full years younger. He's only 23, and Nico's almost 26. So I mean, we're looking at 2 full years of production here, and I thought
for some reason I thought he was about to turn 24. Or
he is about to turn 24, Puka, but Nico is about to turn 26.
Puka was an older senior when he came out last year, but Nico was 3 years ahead of him, or two years ahead of him. So currently, Justin Jefferson, I guess there's a minimum on this, but Justin Jefferson, 96.5 yards per game. Jamar Chase, 87.5 yards per game. So that would put Puka at, if he's at 88 yards per game, second career all time. So if he sustains that, like he's number 2. Calvin Johnson was 86. Julio Jones was 82.5. Michael Thomas, 79. Tyreek Hill, 78. CeeDee Lamb, 78. Jerry Rice, 75. And Torrey Holt, 77.
And I just see that going up. I just see that, with, somebody like Cooper Kupp potentially not being there next year, they may bring in somebody that's not going to earn that type of target share. They definitely need somebody to open it up on the outside for him, because I think that would really help, because Puka's taken on a lot of that type of that wear and tear on him. So I'm hoping that they could bring in somebody down there that could with some speedster on the edge, but he's got the target share, he's got the age, and I just think if he's connected with McVay for a long time here, I just really like Puka, and he's just been elite, and I can't deny that.
So he's becoming more of a blue chip stock. Because
he's there. He's not viewed in that manner. So I think I might try to pull a trade off where I try to get.
Well, I mean, let's look at the guys right now that Player Profiler have ahead of Puka right now in their dynasty rankings. They got Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb. That's it.
And look who's right behind them.
Nico Collins, and then Malik Neighbors. So I mean, it's really tight down the stretch here, and CJ Stroud and Nico are connected for a long time, and there's some question marks about Nico Collins and that connection with Stroud long term, where we see the struggles that Stroud had this year, and the Puka, we don't even know who his quarterback's going to be, after the 2025 season for the most part here. So we'll see there, and he's earned the targets.
The important thing about his quarterback, though, going into 2025 that we need to note is that Matthew Stafford will target the shit out of his number 1 receiver, regardless of what else is going on. He's like, shit, Puka's down there somewhere. So, like, we need to be keeping that in mind when making plans for 2025 redraft. I know I will. Like 1,000%. Hey, Matthew Stafford and Puka are going to be linked up, and Puka's his guy now. And he's been a part of Calvin Johnson's record-breaking season, Cooper Kupp's triple threat, record-breaking season. Like, he's been a part of both of those and a large part of it. So I love that call, Mike.
And Puka Nacua's record-breaking rookie season.
Exactly.
Who saw that coming? I mean, other than Debro, really. I mean, I had some
Eastern Washington fans.
I mean, I had some Puka shares because of that, and it was because of that call, and bigz kind of got me off of a little bit too because of your Jefferson take that year. But I mean, there was a situation that evolved in that offense that there's obviously an opportunity for targets. There's anybody that's connected with Matthew Stafford there is going to be eating, and that process was sound, bigz, when we were talking about that and we're reflecting on that Jefferson call, because Puka was nowhere on the radar at that stage. So how would you ever peg that? So your analysis was right on the money, and Jefferson could have been that guy, and it ended up being Puka. But
he's talking about Van Jefferson, folks, not Justin.
Yeah. Yes, because it was a take that you had last year or headed into 2023 that he was a guy that we were looking at on the radar as a breakout candidate, or after a decent season he had leading up to that after an injured 2022. Van Jefferson was lined up for a lot of targets. He was getting healthy, and if we didn't see that Puka Nacua coming, Jefferson could have been that guy.
Well, it taught me a lot about Sean McVay coach speak. He's not going to tell you what he's thinking, because he was talking up Justin Jefferson or Van. I did it. He was talking up Van Jefferson, and he said nothing about Puka Nacua that wasn't just like platitudes. All of the coach speak that was like, this guy's our number one wide receiver, he's going to be getting the targets, that was all Van Jefferson. But in reality, he was like, nobody knows about this Puka kid, and I'm going to make use of that. And so don't take Sean McVay at face value.
The only person who just spit bars about like full transparency that I can remember was Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp was praising Puka Nacua like crazy all off season. So
how could you not? Look at the hair, look at the flow, everything just lined up for Puka Nacua. I mean, God, I wear the Puka necklace. It's
I mean, if somebody is Samoan, you have to like give them a bump up in your rankings regardless.
Totally. I love it.
Oh, you just cut out. We can talk about some Samoan guys, like the travesty that just happened to the Oregon Ducks with their 5-star recruit out of Hawaii, choosing between them and Cal, and he chose the Oregon Ducks. Went to Oregon for 2 weeks, got all the Nike merch, and then bounced into the portal, and now he's coming to Cal.
Is he really?
Should win the job as a freshman. The last freshman starting quarterback at Cal was Jared Goff.
Man,
that ties it all back together.
Oh, bigz, tying it all back to Jared Goff, Nevada boy. Yeah,
well, Cal, really, Cal.
Always going back to Jared Goff, no matter what.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, guys, hour and a half in, it just always feels like, the time just flies on this show. It's great company, great friends, and great analysis. So it's always a great time. We're going to come back next week with our stock down. We'll have another, segment to start off the show. We haven't decided what that's going to be. It's Dynasty Forward here, folks. So got a lot going on right now. bigz, take us home like you always do. We got a lot on the go, so maybe fill us in on what we're doing.
Spoiler alert, my stock down is Ashton Jeanty. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, that's a teaser right there.
Chev,
we're already ready.
Just had a stroke. Thank you guys for watching. Follow us at the Undroppables and Fantasy Football Plus. Also, you should be playing Fast Draft. It's fastdraft.app. It's playoff DFS. It's all rookie teams getting you ready for the rookie drafts. It's the best mock draft for rookie drafts app that's out there. Use code BOOTH, BOOTH, like a telephone booth, like a kissing booth, BOOTH, Use promo code BOOTH for your first time $25 deposit. You get a $25 match. And yeah, Fast Draft is fun. The playoff games just launched, and we're into it. We're walking away with money every single week. So get in there. There's some pretty phenomenal games. Also, Underdog. Go to Underdog and play some of your DFS stuff for the playoffs. Use code UNDROPPABLE, and you'll get a deposit match there. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. We hope you win.
We hope
Love
you win.
you guys.
Peace.